and welcome back to another episode of the Help Us Here podcast brought to you by the Beyond Compulsion Academy. Today I'm joined by Mary Paulus and also Mike. Welcome onto the show, Mike and Mary. Mike, you are a recent client of ours. You have gone through the program and you wanted to come on the podcast and share your story with others as well. So I wondered if you could start off by introducing yourself a little bit, tell us a bit about your story of getting hooked on porn and then the methods you try to overcome it and where you're at with things now as well.
Yeah, Tom and Mary, thanks for having me on. It is a pleasure. I actually found your podcast kind of by chance. Just went to the podcast app. Was pretty over being stuck in an addiction that I've carried for a long time, and like, oh, I'll give it a shot. And so, but yeah, my name's Mike, and I am from Texas. I have a wonderful life. I'm married and have elementary school age kids, and yeah, just enjoy life, but have had a struggle with addiction for over 20 years. And so I probably like most people that are part of the program found pornography at a younger age. I was 14 and was looking for some cool decorations for my room. Not weird at all. Just accidentally typed something wrong and up popped pornography, and never seen anything like that before. And kind of the rest was history. Got hooked to it. And then really have been trying to permanently quit ever since then. And have tried various methods. From internet blockers to flip phones to professional counseling to online support groups. I mean, you just go down the list because um, it's just nothing
I
that
don't think
has
I'd heard
worked.
flip phones before.
I had a flip phone from about 2010 to 2013, probably, because I was like, why not? Let's try it. And so yeah, and so pornography has been a problem, like I said, for over 20 years, and then probably about 8 years ago, got addicted to nicotine, and so mostly that was tobacco pouches, or there's all sorts of different things out there nowadays, but dip and snus pouches, which started off as just a fun
Yeah.
thing to do while golfing or hanging out with friends, and turned into a full-fledged addiction that I tried to quit a few times over the years, and unsuccessfully so. Um, and so really, this past year was one of the more challenging years I've had on a personal level. And it was just, I kind of hit rock bottom yet again, and was like, man, I this has to change. I know that this I know that this can change. I'm not sure how to do it, but determined again to kind of find an answer, which was honestly scary because I've tried so many different things, so many different times. Really, I'm sure we'll get into this more as we get going, but yeah, just really struggling with feeling like it was me, like I was the problem. And so I found you guys and realized that it was the methods that I was trying were
Yeah,
the
what were
problem.
the methods? Can you kind of tell us what the methods were that you tried?
Yeah, methods were, totally denying the desire for sure. Like just ignore it, block it, run away from it. Tom, I mean, when I heard your personal story of the things you had tried and the streaks, I mean, I've been on really long streaks, and have been miserable in the process, or so burnout from the amount of distractions and the amount of phone calls and the amount of, whatever, by substituting that, I was like, man, this just isn't, I can't do this for the next 60 years of my life. So yeah, I mean, journaling, I'm a person of faith as well. So that's a whole other, um, kind of approach as well, from a morality standpoint, and prayer, meditation, um, things like that, journaling, being honest with other people, and being trying to be held accountable, which mostly turned into blind leading the blind, of like, I don't know what to do either, so we're just
Yeah.
confessing without any real like, well, guess we'll try to call each other better next time. I don't know. Um, to yeah, I mean, in counseling, it was uh, a lot of substitution, honestly. It's like for every bad habit you have, you got to reinforce three new habits.
Yeah.
Um, and that's how you rewire the brain. And so, gosh, I'm trying to think of what other strategies. But those are
Mm.
really the ones, Tom, that I heard you use are all ones that I've tried. Going for a walk or working out or
Yeah, yeah. And how was this problem like impacting you so day by day? I know you've touched on it a little bit there, but what would you say some of the main consequences of living in an addiction were for you? How did it maybe impact your relationships and work and other areas of life?
yeah. Yeah, just a disclaimer, I'm an emotional person and the pain is real and raw. And so I think just the pain of secrecy is really deep. Where you feel like you're projecting a certain self, one that you feel like you really are on a lot of levels, but you're also withholding a certain part of yourself. And that is just that level of feeling like a hypocrite is really, really challenging and painful. Um, Especially when it's involuntarily exposed. And so, that was definitely painful. Um, I mean, just now that I've been properly stopped for a bit now, I mean, I just didn't realize I'm realizing more and more how much of a hell I was living in, if that makes sense. Because now I'm not living there anymore. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I've had sleep issues for as long as I can remember. I have literally been sleeping like a baby, which
Wow.
people say that, and it's kind of funny because babies sleep terribly, but like when babies sleep for 12 to 14 hours, it's awesome. But sleeping like that kind of baby, where I mean, I go to, and I've always envied my wife for this. And I always joke it's because she has a clear conscience, but she goes to sleep, no problem. Wakes up, no problem. And I tended to lay down and not even thinking about pornography or nicotine or things like that, but just spiraling thoughts of anxiety, of fears, of judging myself for how I failed throughout the day, just the constant um, either past or future thinking. Um,
Not
and
pleasant.
and and just yeah, feeling like a failure big time. And because it's like how I mean, it's very simple, right? Just don't look at pornography. It's very simple. It's either you choose to look at it or you choose to not. And I don't, and I felt like I really don't want to look at it. And here I keep finding myself choosing to engage in a behavior that, theoretically I don't want to. And it, one of the things in your program for those who aren't super familiar is you write a remember letter of
Yeah.
where you remember what it's like. And man, just it remembering what it's like just being like, okay, this is the last time. Or remembering what it's like of there's something seriously wrong with me. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like,
Yeah.
why can I not stop this thing? Or
I remember the day
nicotine.
you read your remember letter to me. That
Yeah,
was,
I have a
yeah.
video of it. I think after I read it to you, it probably took me like 20 to 30 minutes to read because I couldn't stop crying.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember. Yeah.
because it's it has been I have felt like a slave for
Yeah.
my entire life, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, and then, you think, okay, well, once I get married, or once I have a daughter, or once I'm 30, or what, you just keep pushing out, like, surely I'll outgrow this thing, or surely I'll stop at some point. Um, and I think just the pain of also, you know, we have a couple of daughters and a couple of sons, and, you know, just the fear of I know without a doubt my kids are going to be exposed to pornography. Without a doubt. Like it is going to happen with the amount of screens
Inevitable.
that are up there, the amount, I mean, it's whether it's intentional or not, it's going to happen. And one of my biggest wounds from growing up is that my parents didn't help me. Um, and I was very much so viewed as like, what is wrong with this freak? Like, just stop it, essentially.
Yeah.
And we've since had a lot of great restorative conversations. They didn't know how to handle it, and it's honestly, I'm very grateful for them and their humility of being like, we had no idea what to do. We're sorry we didn't help you. But it's still it's one of my biggest fears of doing that to my own kids. And so it's like just the anxiety of I haven't figured out how to help myself. So how the hell am I going to help my kids?
Yeah.
um, or them seeing me put a dip in, or hey, Dad, what's this? What's in this can? Why can't I have it? And um, my oldest daughter is she's incredible, but she's 10, and she's like, Dad, when are you gonna? Why do you do this? What? When are you
Yeah.
gonna stop doing it? And just all the things of just kind of mounting uh, pressure of, man, I don't want to be this person anymore. Um, and I don't want to hide it and pretend like I'm not this person. And I want to be better for myself. I want to stop hating myself, stop feeling like a failure, stop feeling like um, there's something wrong with me. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better dad now and in the future when, they have a problem. I can be like, oh, I know exactly what to do, and we're going to do it together. And so, just the inadequacy of knowing that I was incompetent to do those things, it was crushing, honestly.
Mm.
Um, negatively impacts intimacy. And I feel like whenever people hear intimacy, they think sex, which of course is a part of intimacy, but just there's also, non-sexual intimacy with people where you're known by people and you're loved by people for your whole self. And that doesn't require sex at all. And I think just you hit a certain ceiling with intimacy when you're stuck in an addiction,
But you
because
can't be honest. When
you
you're not
can't.
being honest, it's really impossible to have intimacy, in my opinion. Yeah.
I agree. And I have people that I in used to still do, but when I was in my addiction, I did have people that I was fully honest with. And then I had this confliction of only some of these people, only some people that I really love and desired full intimacy with. Um, I'm only letting some of them in, if that makes sense. There was even like I was doing it well with a certain group of people that I really trusted and wanted help from. And there were others that I was like, oh, I don't know. I can't really be that person with them. And so even just
Yeah.
that conflict. So
So it sounds like there was a bit of a lack of integrity because there's something going on behind closed doors, so then you can't really have that connection and intimacy because you're not living completely in truth with everyone because you're not even sort of displaying what's really going on in your mind to the rest of the world. And I totally resonate with that. And thanks for sharing all of that. I obviously
yeah,
have so much understanding for what you've been through because it's very similar to what I went through. And also,
yeah,
I love what you've done and what you're still working on and how you are setting not only achieving the success in rewiring your own neural pathways, but you're doing this to set a good example to others. And even like coming on
yeah,
this podcast today and wanting to set a good example, be a role model to others and show what is
mm,
possible. It's so
yeah,
so amazing to hear, and thank you for sharing your story with us. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit
yeah,
about how things are nowadays? And I know it's not been that long since you joined the program, like a few months,
yeah,
but it's interesting with addiction recovery because I think the more you understand, the more freedom you experience, the more peace of mind you have, and so it's actually a lot less about the amount of days you go without behavior, and it's more about the
Yeah.
rewiring of the changing of thought patterns and the amount of times you deal with those urges correctly. So, how have you been experiencing the freedom and peace of mind? I know you shared with us a lot of stories over the last few weeks, but do
Yeah.
you want to elaborate on those stories a bit more?
Yeah, Tom, for sure. And I don't know who is listening to this right now, that needs to hear this, but I mean, I had multiple times reached utter despair of like this. I need to accept that this is just going to be my life. Um, and this sucks, but I just need to make the most of it because I'm always going to be an addict. I'm always going to have this problem. And, I remember the way you both spoke about addiction and that permanent mental freedom was possible. And I had never heard those things before, honestly. And remember all the things I shared that I had tried and gone researched and read and all the things. I'd never heard that before, and honestly was very hesitant to give you guys a try because I was just like, here's another thing I'm throwing money at that I'm probably going to fail at that it isn't going to work. And so if you're thinking that right now, like just I would encourage you to give it a shot, because I literally, as someone with 2 decades worth of feeling like a failure and trying all these different methods, this is the one that's been different and has actually worked. And again, I think to your point that it hasn't been like I'm not on the longest streak of my entire life right now, but it's completely different. And so I think, I'll start with nicotine because that is such a like, guys, that is tough to stop. Um,
Been there.
and I've tried. What?
I said, been there.
Yeah, Mary gets it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny as well because
And
we've got like Mary who's dealt with the
Yeah.
nicotine addiction. That was your original compulsion, and then you got me with the porn addiction, that being my main compulsion.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like the super combination. And then you've obviously gone and overcome nicotine and porn
Oh,
addiction. But, yeah, it's quite funny how that's
yeah,
worked out. But yeah, carry on.
yeah, no, yeah, you guys were definitely made for me for sure. But yeah, nicotine I had tried to stop several times in the past, and just the withdrawals are real and terrible when you're doing it the wrong way,
yeah.
and trying to stop the wrong way. And so, one of the things you guys talk about a lot is just, yeah, I mean, you're going to experience discomfort when you're trying to rewire your brain. Like that,
Yeah.
it's going to happen, but you don't have to be miserable while you're doing it, and you don't have to be, um, you're miserable while you're in the addiction, and then when you're trying to quit or stop the wrong way, you're also miserable when you're not engaging. So it's just kind of like choose your miserable kind of deal. And what I found in using this method is that there is misery, that's short term, and then as you rewire your brain, that actually goes away. Like my last streak of quitting nicotine, which this is not a streak, um, was was longer than, or maybe not longer, but about around now. And I was just as miserable like 2 months in as I was day one of quitting
Yeah.
nicotine. And just the cravings and the constant desire and the like, I mean, my jaw is kind of on fire right now because my brain's like, ooh, addicted part is like, hey, you should
Yeah.
you should get some. But anyways, it's just, it's such a different experience, and golf is like a big trigger for me. That's another thing I was taught was, you got to identify your triggers and avoid your triggers. And it's like, well, then I don't know. I have triggers everywhere. My
Yeah.
kids
So,
cry.
so you
I'm
love golf,
triggered.
but don't golf anymore. Maybe you should
Yeah,
take
don't
up,
golf, don't go outside,
yeah.
don't drive. I mean, whatever. Don't eat. Anyways, all of them are
Yeah.
triggers. So, I got to golf twice this weekend, which was incredible and extremely rare. And the people that I love that I get to golf with, drink and smoke and dip, and it's like a thing. Um, and in times past when I've quit nicotine and it's been present, I'm just like white nut, like holding on to my seat, like, okay, don't even look at the can, don't smell it, don't, do anything because you're gonna want to give in and then you're gonna ruin your streak. And I can't even explain to you what it's like to just be like, man, I honestly do not want that. because I know what I'm choosing if I choose that. Like I am choosing to be everything I just described in the first section of this podcast. That's what I'm choosing if I use nicotine. I'm choosing to be a slave. I'm choosing to be playing with my kids and being like, oh shoot, I don't have my can with me. Like I need to run back to the car. Or I need to go to the gas station.
And Mike, can I add, I remember when I stopped smoking all those years ago, and I was with smoking friends, and they get kind of pissed off at me, like, why wasn't I
Right.
craving it? Why was I so chill and calm about it? And I'm just like, well,
Yeah,
there's this class you can go to and you can learn
that's
too
right.
how to be okay with it, and it's, yeah. So anyway,
Right.
go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. My dad was an alcoholic, and when he quit drinking, he lost a lot of his friends because they were like, "Oh, it's not fun to hang out with you if you're not doing this," or they're
Yeah,
feeling bad about, where they're at and how
exactly.
they can't stop and they need it, and so they don't really know what to do about that. I've been a huge evangelist for you guys. I'm telling everyone, I'm like, "Hey, you know what? It's not about the substance, it's about your brain. And you got to rewire your brain. And these people know how to do it. So you just got to go do it. And so, you know, anyways, and even substitutions of being on a golf course, I always thought like, oh, okay, well, I at least need to have gum or coffee grind pouches or sunflower seeds or, something to do with my mouth,
Right.
the oral
The oral
fixation.
fixation.
Yeah. And I think just realizing with y'all's help that, yeah, all of that's a lie, and I had so much fun playing golf, and I also played the best I've ever played. Um, and honestly, I used to put so much pressure on myself in everything in life, like don't F it up, essentially. And now that I'm, you know, rewiring my brain. It's just been kind of a waterfall effect into so many different areas of my life where, I would hit a bad shot in golf, and I'm not good at golf, by the way. Um, but I'm improving and aspiring. And so, I would hit a bad shot, which is 100% to be expected. And yeah, it would just ruin my time, or I would get a bad score on a hole. It was just I would be so in my head and so angry and frustrated, and then I would get a good score on a hole, and I'd be like, yeah, that like I expected that, like that. Why can't I do that every time? Like just never satisfied, never happy, never experiencing, not never happy, but just I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Tending towards beating myself up when I do achieve something that should be exciting or that I am trying to achieve, it's the expectation. It's the bare minimum. Well, yeah, I mean,
Mm.
don't be
With
proud of it. Like
addiction,
you should be doing that.
that feeling of always wanting to get more and do more and
More.
change the way you
Yeah.
feel, that's insatiable. And then it bleeds into everything. Everything's like
Yes.
in that hamster wheel of always wanting to change the way you feel and never just feeling, good and peace of mind. And okay, so I missed a shot. So what?
Yeah. And then what are you gonna? I mean, it's just it's so like clear now looking
Yeah.
back because the fog has lifted. Um, it's so clear. It's like, well, if you beat yourself up for hitting a bad shot and that's all you're thinking about, what do you think you're gonna do
Yeah.
when you step up to take your next shot?
Yeah. Right.
Probably not going to have a good one because you're
Right.
so in your head and angry. And then it just keeps snowballing to where you're,
Yeah.
it's
Mm.
all going to be terrible.
And
Whereas
then
if you're like,
when you're
oh,
using, you can use it as a reason. I had a bad
that's right.
shot, so now I
That's right.
can use it.
Put a
Maybe I
lip
just
in,
need another pouch,
take a drink. Yeah,
or
that's
another
so
drink.
true.
Hmm.
That's so true. And you guys can edit this out since it's free advice if you need to. But Mary, one of the things you said to me was the excuse or reason doesn't matter. The consequence is the same.
That's
Doesn't
right.
matter that you're stressed. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter that you had a bad shot. It doesn't matter that your kid is, whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your wife said to you or did. It doesn't matter what your bank account says. Like
Yeah.
all whatever reason you're using to engage in this behavior, and
Yep.
as if that's going to help you feel any better. Sure, it might for a brief moment, maybe.
Millisecond.
Um, yeah, whatever reason, excuse doesn't matter. The consequence is the exact same. what
that's
you're doing to
exactly right.
yourself
We
and
don't need to
staying in
edit
that
that
addiction.
out. Yeah, it's so true. It's like it doesn't
Gosh,
matter if it's a giant crisis in your life, you've lost everything, whatever. There's, a hurricane or whatever down there, you've lost everything, or you stubbed your toe.
that's right.
If you choose to engage, the consequences remain the same, and that's everything that's
Yeah,
documented in your
yeah,
in your remember letter. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
yeah.
funny you say that right now, Mike, as well, because literally about 20 minutes before this call, I was on a client call with another guy in our program, and we were literally doing the exercise talking about the looking for reasons and what goes on. And so we went through the exercise, and I was asking him, what are the reasons that you've wanted to watch porn? And he was talking
Mm,
about anxiety, despair, meaningless, lack of purpose, shame, pain in various ways, loneliness, all these things, right? And we really just drill down into the reality that you don't need a reason. And the reason that you don't need a reason is because you can do it. And when you understand like fully that you can do this thing, you understand
yeah,
actually you don't need a reason to like go away, rationalize because the consequences, as you say, are going to be the same. And like bringing it back to, the remember letter and all of those consequences that you talked about at the start of the podcast, it's like, all of that is going to exist whether you come up with any sort of reason. Those consequences are
that's
always
right.
going to remain the same. And so that's why it's always about empowering the people we work with to make choices for themselves and get to experience that real sense of empowerment and peace of mind and freedom that they're doing this for themselves. And I think that's something that you've really taken on board throughout the time in the program.
Mm,
The other thing you were talking about a bit earlier ago, when you were saying how you've been a bit of a I can't even say the word, but you like
evangelist.
Evangelist.
yeah, that word. Right, I'm not very good at talking today, but we'll go with it. So, when you were sort of like talking about the program and stuff to other people, and you were saying how it's really not about the behavior itself, it's more about what's going on in the brain. I want to
Yeah,
ask you, like, what was your perspective on the whole porn side of things prior to this program versus how it is now? Because I think a lot of people think it's to do with sexual desires and this like
yeah,
intrinsic, like sexual desire. But as we teach, it's really about compulsive desire, which is very different to like your inherent sexual desires, right?
yeah, 100%. And that was something I had I think learned but not quite understood until, being in Yale's program, was that, sexual intimacy with a partner is a different thing than porn engagement. And I was like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense, different parts of the brain, whatever. But it didn't quite translate into like who I am as a person, where I was just like, man, I love my wife. Um, I'm not unfaithful to her by cheating on her with a different person, all these things. So it's like, why am I enjoying looking at pornography? Or even I would feel shame, a ton of shame. Um, because I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I looking at this? Like, I'm happy in my marriage, all these things. And I think the more I've learned through the program is that it is a it is a wiring in my brain of that happened, 23 years ago, in a very malleable and shapeable brain, to a dopamine response of, hey, when I look at this and have this certain response to it, just huge high. And so, of course, the brain wants more and more of that, however it can get it. And, pornography just visually stimulate all the things that is why it's a big pandemic, in our world, and so easily accessible and predatory, all the things. Even on a value standpoint, a morality standpoint, I have done a lot of research into the pornography industry, like, and I'm super against it on a rational, moral, ethical stance, which made me hate myself even more for choosing to engage in it. And so I think what I've been able to learn is separating it, which doesn't excuse it. I want to be clear in that it doesn't excuse the behavior at all. Um, But I think separating it from, hey, there's an addicted part of my brain that needs to be treated and addressed. And there's a method and a tool to do that. And there's people that understand it that I can lean on. And,
Can I
go
add
ahead, Mary.
something
Yeah,
there? You know,
please.
I think, a lot of times people come in with multiple addictions, they have they come in, they find us for porn, right? But then they've got food going on, they've got nicotine going on, whatever. And I always encourage them, for sure, to try to deal with these other addictions at the same time. And I think that really benefited you because you were all in like,
Yeah.
okay, I mean, first there's resistance. Oh my God, I can't,
I was
I
horrified to
can't do
quit nicotine.
nicotine too. Oh
Yeah.
my God, right? But
Yeah.
I think that one thing that really helps with is that you can, because the pornography is connected to sexuality, to separate those two, for you
Right.
to use the methodology for stopping the nicotine, you can see how that rewiring can happen. And then it's
Yes.
more encouraging to go, okay, this porn is an addiction in the same way in my addicted neural pathways. So then you have that
Yeah.
evidence that because nicotine, you go right into withdrawal. It's not this kind of thing that keeps creeping in a little bit, but it's like
Right.
withdrawal. You see it work, and then
There's
you
no
can see
missing it.
porn is an addiction as well, and I can apply it in the
Yeah.
same way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great point because I was super resistant to quitting nicotine when I first joined the program. Um, and Mary, I really love you because you say what needs to be said with zero apologies, which I think I needed. I mean,
I've
honestly,
been
I
told
was
that.
in. Yeah, it's so valuable though because I think in a society where we're just kind of like we kind of beat around the bush and don't want to step on toes and I think for you to I needed someone to be like, look, you're saying you want to be permanently mentally free. Here's
Yeah.
what you got to do. And
Yeah.
you can choose to do it or not. Like you don't you don't have to do this,
Yeah.
but if you want what you're saying you want, this is the path.
Yeah.
And I think really being able to because I didn't have the personal moral uh hatred for myself around nicotine. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, I was just like, dude, it's freaking nicotine. It doesn't matter. It's like I could be doing cocaine. It's not that bad. Which
Yeah.
again is junkie thoughts, which you guys address in other places.
Same
But
pharmacological family, by the way, cocaine and nicotine. So
yes, which
just
is why it
FYI.
sucks quitting.
Yeah.
But I think my point is maybe not the junkie thought side, but my point is that I wasn't tying I'm a terrible person to my nicotine use as I was with my pornography use. And so when I identified, oh, these are coming from the exact same place of miswired neural pathways, it changed everything for me because I was just like, okay, yeah. I mean, what 14-year-old boy wouldn't had it have had his brain rewired in this way?
Seriously,
Um,
no shame,
and I
man.
just
I don't know
and
how they
I've
can avoid it at this point.
sure. And I think just being like, okay, now I have a tool and I have people that know what they're actually freaking talking about for the first time. So let's
Yeah.
go do it. Let's rewire. And it's just been, I mean, I used to be horrified of being by myself or horrified of, not charging my phone in a different room or horrified of, walking into a gas station. I mean, just the fear of when is it's just a matter of time. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of time till I'm going to screw it up. And I'm
Yeah.
miserable while I'm stopped. And I think just being able to actually rewire my brain with the tools you guys provide and help me craft to personalize. I mean, it's I've been so creative lately. I've sent you guys like way more content than you probably ever wanted, but it's
Yeah.
because I'm excited. I have energy, I have passion. I mean, just I feel like myself at my best moments, which I even experienced in addiction. I'm sure we all do. Like those moments of joy. Like Tom, you talk about football. Huge football fan, played a lot, and like I'm coaching my son's team right now, which is an absolute blast. We call it soccer, this side of the Atlantic, but I mean, it's just I am feeling alive way more often. Am I stressed still? Yes. Does life suck at times? Yes. Am I proud of every single decision I make? No. Like it's normal life, but it's in real color now. And I'm just I don't know. And there are a lot of situations in my life that are really unknown and scary and on a practical level. Like on my circumstances outside of dealing with addiction have not changed at all. Um, and yet I'm experiencing this freedom and joy and peace and um I don't know. I'm so excited about it because I never thought this was possible, honestly. Like I had resigned myself to thinking just gotta freaking survive and try my best.
Well, and
And
validated by therapy, it sounds like. I think you had mentioned that I
yeah,
mean, and that's the advice out there is you're going to be dealing with this for life. And so
yeah,
just find ways to distract
that's
and
right.
cope and change your life in other ways that,
Yeah.
fulfill your life with other things, all this kind of stuff, rather than permanent mental freedom is actually possible. So,
Yeah.
Well,
I know it's
and
hard for people to believe when they're so stuck in the mire of addiction and like the conflict all the time. It's how do you believe like, oh, permanent mental freedom from this is possible? It's hard to
yeah,
believe,
Mary, I mean,
you know?
and you as a former, I don't know what the right language is, but as a person with former addicted neural pathways,
Yeah,
my therapist, she was wonderful and well-meaning and,
yeah, they are.
helpful in certain ways. She was a former alcoholic who was who had overcome it and basically told me or asked me like, well, what if porn is just a problem for the rest of your life? Because it's different than alcoholism, it's different than whatever. And I think that was our last session because I was just like, I refuse to accept that. Like I
Yeah.
refuse to accept that I'm just going to be stuck in this place. And it honestly took me a while to trust another group, which was you guys, to try again because I was just like, what if, man, what if they don't have the answer either? And
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know. I think just the simplicity of y'all's approach, the personal experience, it's not some secret snake oil that you need 15 million steps and your entire life savings to accomplish. I mean, it makes sense because it's so simple and
And the
you're a
other thing is
normal
our method is
experienced
not
people.
like open to all this different interpretation. You know what I'm saying? It's not like,
100%.
well, I gotta, okay, that's kind of this is the concept, and I kind of got to think this way or how I'm gonna
That's right.
whatever. But it's so specific. You compile it, the script, you personalize it, and you use it. It's not like, and like I say, not open to interpretation where you have to fill in all the blanks. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you're going to
Yes.
fill in the documentation, but other than that, this
Right.
is this very specific methodology you're going to
Yep.
apply every time you have this desire, and your neural pathways are going to change. It's like,
Regardless of the desire. That was the other thing that was so appealing was I didn't have a different approach to pornography as I did to nicotine. And that made so much sense too, because, with the food compulsion or nicotine or alcohol or drugs or pornography, I mean, whatever it is,
yeah,
this
yeah,
applies because it's a brain issue.
yeah,
It's not a food issue. It's not a tobacco issue. It's not a pornography issue. It's a brain
yeah.
issue. And so I don't know. I could keep going on and on. Maybe there were
Well, if you
other
think about it too,
things
if
we
you
need to talk
take
about, but
like all the different ways they treat other addictions, then
that's my
like,
yes.
so what are you going to put up a blocker for nicotine?
Yep.
What are you going to put a roadblock or put up a blocker on the door to the 7-Eleven? I mean,
Right.
it just
Right.
is ridiculous where addicted neural pathways are addicted neural pathways, and one method can take care of all that. And when you use it for different addictions, it's enhancing freedom from all addictions,
Right. Well, and
but if
I
they're
don't
different
want
addictions,
to
it's
have to
all
do that.
different, you know?
I don't
Yeah,
want to have a blocker.
yeah,
I want to be able to trust myself. I don't
hell
want to
yeah,
have a nicotine pouch or a
yeah,
patch of a
yeah,
lower dose. Like
yeah,
I want to be free and not need to go to a meeting or, like that is what I want for my
Yeah.
life. I don't want a bunch of stuff that I pay for, subscriptions, and there's all these marketing ads of, hey, buy these things or buy this subscription or do this thing on your phone, and you can't get around it. Okay, well, what about my TV? Or
Yeah,
what about
right.
my iPad? Or what about my computer? Or what, I mean, it's like I I don't want to not have access to things. I want to be free to where I don't even like my desires have actually been transformed. Um,
Yes.
and that is what I found here,
Yeah.
which is, gosh, I've been trying to do that my whole life.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I love it for
Thank you.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. And I think another thing which is so important, and I've probably already mentioned it, but it's like the results are less important than the methodology that gets you the results. So obviously you've come to us, you wanted to quit porn, but it's all of the byproducts of using the methodology which gets you to experience the peace of mind, freedom, empowerment, gets you to live the life you want to live without any conditions, any restrictions, any exhausting tasks that you have to keep up with day by day. Like when I was in the
Yeah.
porn addiction, I had all these different rules, and I felt like if I don't meditate, if I don't go to the gym, if I don't eat healthily, if I don't get the right amount of sleep, if I don't socialize, if I don't do all these different things, then shit, I'm gonna get triggered in some way, and I'm gonna end up choosing to engage. Like I'm gonna relapse because I've
Yeah.
not done X. Like I had all these conditions. Whereas when you have a script that deals with compulsive desire, you don't need to worry about all those other things in life. And you kind of come to a point where you realize that most self-improvement, in a way, isn't actually that useful. And it's actually
Yeah.
treating the reasons instead of treating the compulsive desire, which is the main problem. So
Yeah.
I wonder if,
Yeah.
you kind of resonate with that as well, Mike.
Without a
Yeah.
doubt. I mean, sustainability is huge, right? And that's something. I'm at a stage of life where it's full. Life is full, with a lot of kids and activities and at work and all the things that we all have going on. Life is full. And so for me to add another anything is stressful, much less, 7 activities to your daily grind. And then also they don't work.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the other thing
There's
is
that.
you go through all of that and and then it doesn't end up working long term. Sure, it might work for a bit, but again, you're miserable while you're doing it for the most part. And what I found, Tom, is like all those things that you just listed, they're not wrong, right? It's not bad to be fit and to journal and meditate and to be active and to socialize and all those things. And what I found is my desire for those things has dramatically increased since I've stopped engaging the
Yeah.
desire the
Can I
right
add to
way.
that?
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
because like when you're not using those the meditation and the fitness and the whatever to try to treat an addiction, which is
Yeah,
doesn't work, like you said, then when you choose to do those, once you get free of addiction, you choose to do those things, then you actually get the benefit of those of
yeah,
all those practices.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
That's right. And I think again, just the simplicity of it, and the sustainability of it. I'm in a stage of life where I need things to be sustainable. Like even my workout habits and my eating habits where, I'm not trying to be a professional athlete. I'm not trying to, be a bodybuilder, but I want to be sustained. I want to be able to wrestle my kids and not be sore and maintain health and yeah,
feel good.
just more sustainability. Yeah, feel great and
Yeah,
this enhances that for
Mm.
sure.
Yeah, and I
nice.
think on the point of simplicity as well, the good thing is you now don't need to go and search for another new answer. Like there's nothing now, like you don't need to seek anything else, right? Like you've got what you need to
Yeah,
rewire your brain and you just apply it and then that's that, it's done. You don't need to be on this treadmill of always seeking new information and going around in
right.
circles and then relapsing anyway.
Yeah, and if the
That's
addictive
right.
part of the mind tries to like, down the road think, oh, let's see if he's forgotten how horrible it was. We'll sneak in a little
Yeah,
junky thinking like it wasn't really so bad when you start to forget or whatever. all you do is
Yeah,
apply your script again and just give a
that's right.
refresh, you know? It's all
That's
the same.
right. Well,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Tom, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember in the program thinking like, there's got to be more to it than this, right? Like this, it can't be this. It can't be this, right? Surely there's something missing. Surely it's like I'm gonna get through, and then they're like, oh, for the next stage of recovery, you need to pay this much money, and you learn all this other secret wisdom. I mean, there's not. I just was like, surely this can't be it, and it is, and I think that that's the beauty of it as well. Um, is is that it's simple and it makes sense.
Mm.
And
Simple but
I don't know.
powerful.
It's so powerful. And to your point, Mary, about just remembering, I took a video of myself reading my remember letter, in a very raw state. And I'll listen to it and sometimes watch it, which is harder to do, because I don't want to forget. Like, I don't want to forget how absolute, not to make myself feel ashamed, not to like beat myself up, but just the absolute hell it is to be in an addiction. And I don't ever want to choose to go back there. And that, I mean, the golf thing of seeing people use nicotine and even when my body sometimes is like, or the addicted part of my brain is like, ooh, I want that. I mean, I just go right back to no, because I'm choosing the guy who was sitting in this seat, recording
Yeah,
himself, bawling his eyes out of the
yeah.
hell that in prison that he was in. That's what I'm choosing if I put that in my mouth,
And when you
or
put
if I
that
look at
into
that on
your
my phone, or
brain, you know, you put that permanently into your brain by watching yourself on the video or
yeah,
whatever, then it just becomes such second nature that if a
it's the
desire comes
instinct.
along, it connects
Yes,
directly to that reality. And you're like, no fucking way, you know?
that's right.
Oh, it's
That's right.
that quick at, you know, at some point, you know. Now you can do the work,
That's
but
right.
it becomes second nature at some point, and it becomes a really literally a non-issue.
Mm.
Yes. Whereas
Yeah.
in the past, it's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I really want to do that. And I'm just
Yeah.
not going to do it because blah, blah, blah. So,
Yeah, right.
yeah, huge
Yeah.
difference.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
And then you feel pretty terrible as well because then you've got that resistance because you're trying not to do something rather than actively trying to do something. Like the
Yes.
massive shift that you've undergone has gone from reactivity to proactivity. Like you've gone from defense to attack. It's like instead of being
Yeah.
controlled by the addicted part of the mind, you've now taken control. So, do you want to share a bit about that experience as well, in terms of actually shifting
Yeah.
from reactivity to proactivity, and actually you being the one now who's actively rewiring your addictive neural pathways from this attacking stance instead of being in the place that you would have been in the past?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, one of the things I've learned from you both is you don't want to minimize it. You also and you don't want to minimize it and think, oh, it's just not that big of a deal. I can just stop. You also don't want to maximize it and just be paralyzed by fear of when is it going to come? When's the desire going to come? What am I going to do? And I think really being proactive and here are all the things that I'm actually choosing to do, instead of being focused on, ooh, don't look at porn or oh, don't, put a snus in or whatever. And that's translated to a lot of different areas, like yelling at my kids is something that, I don't want to do and I do because I want to do it as
You
you'll
want
learn
to
if
do
you go
it
in the
and you want to
program.
stop,
I
right?
want to
Yeah.
do it, so I do it, but I also don't want to do it. And and just focusing on, okay, instead of, oh, don't yell at my kids, it's I'm choosing to speak in a calm, matter of fact tone to my kids right now. That's what I'm choosing. Or when it
And
become,
acknowledging the fact that you actually do want to yell at them.
I want to yell at them, and they deserve to be yelled at. They're
Yeah.
being a little
Damn
freaking shit
kids.
right now. So yeah. Um, but I know the damage that causes them, and I
Right.
know how I feel after I do it, and it's the same again, it's the same methodology, same brain issue, and trying to rewire that. And so I think being proactive in the past would have looked like, ooh, I'm alone for the weekend, so I'm gonna text my accountability partners. I'm gonna, I don't want to name any brands, but I'm gonna have my whatever. I'm gonna make sure all the things are set up properly. or I'm going to have people over, all the things to make sure I don't do this thing. And now it looks like, oh, I engage my script when I have a compulsive desire, or
Yeah.
I read my remember letter, or I watch myself doing it, and um, you know, or being proactive in the past would have looked like using substitutions for nicotine.
Yeah.
Um, and now it's, oh, I use my script and I'm proactive in those ways,
Yeah.
um, which has been massive.
Just to add to that as well, and like provide even more of an in-depth explanation of why that's so valuable, is people have a problem going on in their brain, which is the inevitable moment of compulsive desire. Like there's compulsive desire in your brain, and what everyone else in the world is basically trying to do is sort of distract, avoid, substitute,
Yeah,
get away from that desire. Whereas what we're doing with a script and the remember letter is actually connecting to the desire, thinking it through, changing those neural pathways in that moment, which facilitates the choice. Like when you're thinking it through properly, you've got to remember
yeah,
you've got this urge. Your brain wants to go one way. It's natural. You are going to want to engage, but you think it through.
yeah,
You make a choice. It's in that choice that those neural pathways actually change, and that's how you get to a place of
right.
permanent mental freedom. And that's why it is possible to overcome this and change the brain for good, which is really, really
Yes.
quite incredible. And I think you fully understand that, and obviously me and Mary have lived that as well, and you're living it right now. And I just want to get that
Right.
across to anyone listening or watching this because
Yeah.
there's so many misconceptions around addiction, and I think that right there of you saying how you're being proactive by using the script and remember like that right there is like you doing the work to actually change the brain, and pretty much anything outside of connecting to that desire and thinking through that choice is going to be, well, it's not going to be helpful to actually change the brain in the right way.
And you're
Yeah. And
seeing
you have
that
to,
you
oh,
use it and how the change is happening, that this actually happening. So you have that experience that that you can count on the script to use it, whenever you have any desire in any way, or you're trying to make a choice for yourself about life, whatever it is in your life, you have
yeah,
that in place and it's always there for you. So you don't,
yeah,
it's such a benefit to be able to stop looking for a solution. How am I going to
yeah,
deal with this problem? To just be able to put that to rest, and I think it's so important too that you've said that, so many people out there really don't believe that permanent mental freedom is possible. And you were one of those people,
yeah,
but if more people could get that message, rather than just chasing their tails forever, trying to outrun addiction, that would be a beautiful thing. So, yeah.
yeah. One of the things that, Tom, you made me think of was just the that both of you encourage us to courageously face the desire that we've been so long afraid of, that for so long we've tried to run from or distract ourselves with. And it reminded me of there's an ocean videographer for National Geographic or something, and they were asking him, how do you get into open water with like tiger sharks and great white sharks and not get eaten? And he was like, these sharks are like fear, or in my the way I interpret it is like the addiction or the compulsive desire. And they said everything in the ocean swims away from these things or tries to avoid them, tries to, get someone else to make commotion so they can get away, distract them. He's like, the only way to overcome them is you swim right at them. Like you just swim with your camera straight in their face, and then sharks have all these sensitive things in their nose, so you can, whatever, calm them. But the point being, they're like, if you swim away or you panic, you're toast. Like, it's
Yeah.
it's going to eat you. Your compulsive desire is going to overcome you. But when you
Yeah.
courageously face it head on with the proper technique and tools, um, you overcome it. And then it doesn't become a shark anymore. It becomes this little minnow that you're just like, what? Yeah, I'm not going to do that because I
Yeah.
know what I'm choosing. You're not scary anymore. I don't
Nice.
even want that anymore because I've rewired my brain. So
Swimming
made
with
me think of
sharks.
that.
I love it.
Jump
Well
in, no
said.
cage, no
Yeah.
substitutions, no cage.
That's
I
right.
love that.
Yeah.
That's such a good analogy. Yeah, I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
probably use
Yeah.
that again at some point. I love it.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice,
We're
great.
we're going to be encouraging clients to swim with sharks. So we should
Love it.
probably wind it up, Jay.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
getting,
yeah, sure. Yeah, let's wrap up there. Yeah, thank you so much again, Mike, for
yeah,
sharing
Mike.
your
Thank
story and
you.
being so honest and vulnerable, and also hopefully providing some hope and inspiration out there that permanent mental freedom actually is possible. Like you fully can change your brain and get out of any addiction. Like that is possible for you. So
Yeah.
thank you for coming on
Yeah.
and sharing all of this with people. I'm sure it's going to help some people out there. So I really appreciate you.
Awesome,
Awesome.
Mike. Thank
Thank you
you.
both.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah,
Nice one.
definitely.
Nice one. Well, yeah, thank you to anyone watching or listening as well. Hopefully, you have found this useful. If you would like to learn more about the Beyond Compulsion methods, I'll leave a link in the description to a free training video. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.